Okay, so J.D. Vance goes on. He talks to these partisans face to face, eye to eye. He more than holds his own. Donald Trump last night was on a Twitter interview with Elon Musk. I knew it would go bad because I knew hackers on the Democratic side of the aisle or other partisan bootlicks would do everything they could to bring it down. Musk said they tested the chat that he and Trump were going to have with 8 million users on the platform, and it crashed anyway. And what happens is they set up robots to try to access the site where Trump and Musk are talking, and these robots can just continually refresh. They're programmed to do so, and they overwhelm the server and bring the server down. But they eventually got it up, and the audience was about 1 million people, and Trump took questions for like 2 hours. Okay, so this is what, of course, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz will not do. And what they do instead is they send their stooges out to answer questions on their behalf. That way that Harris and Walz can eventually say, well, I never said that. You know what I mean? On tape saying that. So last night, for the first time in a while, I was able to sit down and watch Special Report with Bret Baier. And they have on one of the dumbest, moronic individuals in the Democratic Party, which I know is a high bar, like higher than the pole vault at the Olympics, which I think the guy who won the gold cleared 20 feet. Dan Goldman is the world record holder in stupid for the Democratic Party. He is a billionaire heir to the Levi's blue jean fortune, who no doubt bought his seat because he does not have a brain between his ears. And it was an intellectual mismatch between he and Bret Baier last night. Now, Baier is not, a partisan like Margaret Brennan, John Karl, Dana Bash, Jake Tapper, on and on and on. Bret Baier's tagline is fair and balanced. And I think I can't speak for Democrats because I'm not in touch with evil the way they are. But Bret Baier, I can't do what he does because he keeps his cool in the face of people lying flat to him. So he's bringing up last night imminent Middle East attacks, Ukraine advancing into Russia. These seem to be consequential issues that America would need a president on top of things. And Baier pointed out, people like George Clooney, who's seen Biden up close and personal, say he's not the same Joe Biden. People in the Democratic Party, by finally admitting openly that Biden was addled and couldn't win, were in effect saying he's not up to the job anymore. George Stephanopoulos, in a purposeful on-street interview, I don't think he can serve 4 more years. And Bret Baier asked a question to Dan Goldman, a totally fair question. Look, with all this stuff going on in the world, you got Kamala out here running around, ducking reporters, but back at the White House, woohoo, who's in charge? Joe Biden is asleep on the beach in Delaware over the weekend while the Middle East is blowing up. Dan Goldman, hey, Dano, you who told us Joe Biden was sharp as a tack and got more done in an hour than everybody else can, and his staff couldn't keep up with him. Dan, are you concerned about America? Is Joe Biden up to the task of actually doing the job as president? Because you guys have said he's not up to running for president. So listen to how Goldman tries to duck this question and how Bret Baier pursues him and makes him look foolish.
President Biden has been an absolutely outstanding president, and I know it was a difficult decision for him to put the country over his personal interest and what he thought would be best for the country is to step down. And I think part of the reason he did that was the polling that he continued to see, and that the only thing worse than Donald Trump becoming president again with his Project 2025 agenda would be if Donald Trump becomes president again with a Republican majority in the House and the Senate.
Okay, so did he answer the question? No. Is Biden up to the task? Is he doing the job in the White House? No, we get the long rambling. Biden's great. Everything's fantastic. And we got the lie about Project 2025, which Trump doesn't even know what it is. And Goldman just continues and persists in this until Bret Baier cuts him off and reminds him of reality.
And so he put his own personal interests aside for the good of the country to protect our democracy and our rule of law and our way of life. And he should
utter
be
garbage.
admired for doing that.
No, he shouldn't.
I
I understand that's what Democrats say, but you don't have any concerns about the George Clooney letter, his assessment of his faculties in that debate, in that fundraiser that he wrote about, that you don't have any concerns about the reporting about all of these things that have been said, scripted questions from cabinet members. You don't have any concerns about any of that as President of the United States currently.
Look, Brett, one of the realities of life is that the job of president.
Oh boy, I can't wait for Dan Goldman to tell us the realities of life about the job as president. Listen closely here to what Dan Goldman, who only has his job in politics because he's a billionaire heir to the Levi's fortune, let him set you straight on what president and the responsibilities of that office is really, really, really like.
Look, Brett, one of the realities of life is that the job of president has very little to do with a campaign for the presidency.
Huh? The job of president has very little to do with the campaign for the presidency. Okay, well, I will admit there might be people who are really good at campaigning and they can't do the job as president, but please, Dan, please enlighten us further.
And life as a president, the job of the president is not a debate where you need to respond to your opponent immediately. President Biden has 50 years of experience, especially expertise in foreign policy. And he is able to digest at his own pace with conversations with foreign leaders that he has regularly to guide us in our global efforts to support democracy abroad. And he has done an outstanding job.
Oh, so that's what the job of president is like. See, when you're on a debate stage, according to Dan Goldman, you have to respond to questions that come at you that are not scripted like questions Kamala Harris is answering. But see, that's a tougher task, according to Dan Goldman, than figuring out what to do, let's say, in the event that Vladimir Putin gets a little bit desperate about Ukraine advancing into Russia, and he decides to actually launch a limited nuclear response. And the call comes in at 2 or 3 in the morning, and Joe Biden is asleep, and they come to him, and his response, according to Dan Goldman, because he's got this, 50 years of vast experience in foreign policy, never mind people said that Biden's never been right about foreign policy ever, and his Afghanistan withdrawal proved that. Dan Goldman says, oh, President Biden's great in these situations because he digests information at his own pace. He digests information at his own pace. I saw a picture of Biden asleep, looking dead on the beach in Delaware over the weekend while Israel was worried about an attack. I guess he wasn't asleep. He was digesting at his own pace.